Huangpu situation. The Whampoa storm mentioned by Tom the Lazy Cat. Let me show you a side story. Actually, it's because Oscar worked overtime until 11 o'clock today and couldn't update at 12 o'clock at night. I have to write this side story as an apology. Don't think it is Oscar's new trap. Oscar is very sorry for the error. Happy face. On October 4th, the 13th year of the Republic of China, Guangzhou was very hot. 18-year-old Oscar sat at the door of Guangzhou University worriedly. He was here to wait for his friends. Dazzling in front of him were all beautiful girls in white skirts, with their hair styled into a fashionable coconut shell style, and their silver bell-like laughter made him dizzy. A tall, thin boy wearing a white shirt and a delicate dark girl walked out together, and they were discussing something excitedly. Oscar hurriedly greeted him. "Oh Yang." The tall and thin boy was startled. "Oscar, why are you here? Huangpu, are there no classes today?" Seeing the girl looking at him with a half-smile, Oscar awkwardly picked at his soldier's belt, not knowing how to put his feet in straw sandals. He lowered his head and asked Ouyang in a low voice, "Where are you going now? Are you free? I have something to ask you." Ouyang looked at the girl, wiped his head with his hand, and said with a smile, "I'm busy. I'm going to the Provincial and Hong Kong Workers' Strike Association in the afternoon to rehearse The Peacock Flies Southeast. In the evening, there will be a bonfire party for farmers and students in Baitan. Minister Mao will also come over. If you need anything, please tell me." Oscar glanced at the girl again. "She? Du-Wan." The girl smiled and said, "I'll go away for a while, and you two can chat slowly." Ouyang grabbed her figure who was about to leave and said eagerly, "Moni, don't you understand me yet? Du-Wan is already a thing of the past. I am very happy to meet you in this great era. There is nothing I can't say in front of you." He looked at Oscar again, seeming to want to prove something, and asked a little anxiously, "What's the matter?" Oscar lost his emotions and shook his head and said, "It's nothing. I'll tell her myself." "But how could you?" Ouyang looked at him, who was wearing a soldier's gray-blue military uniform. His legs outside his shorts were tanned, and his face had cracks due to the sea breeze on Chung Chau Island. He shook his head and said, "Oscar, you are behind. The current era is the era of workers, farmers, and students. To make revolution, we must go among workers and farmers. As students, the natural obligation of our generation is to educate the people. Enlighten the people. The separation between Du-Wan and I is inevitable. As the daughter of a businessman in Shiguan, her heart is not revolutionary. How could I be with her again?" He turned his head and glanced at Manny, watching her show a reserved and satisfied smile, and said in a friend's tone, "We came to Guangzhou from Jiangsu together, and you made a mistake in taking the Whampoa exam. Being a soldier can only be a tool of the warlord. I think you should drop out of school and review to prepare for the Guangzhou University exam. You turned out to be very good at your homework. You will live with me during the review period." The girl named Moni raised her hand at this time and said in a cheerful voice, "Ouyang, you're going to be late for rehearsal." Ouyang patted Oscar on the shoulder and said a few words angrily. "Why don't you reply to my aunt's letter? You are so angry at home that you can't even abandon your mother." After saying this, he shook his hand and hurried away with the girl. Oscar was a little confused, turned around, and walked toward Shiguan again. He was from Jiangsu, the second son of a landowner and businessman family in the countryside of Wuxi. His father had always been very strict, and his elder brother was infected with opium while studying and doing business in Nanjing, and could no longer do anything. The father placed all his hopes on his second son, a gentle and good-tempered son, and arranged a marriage for him early, hoping that he would get married well, have children, and inherit the family business. But like all the young people at that time, he was full of thoughts about saving the country and the people. The Huns were not destroyed, so why did he care about his family? A few years ago, Liu Yongxiang and Qi Shiyuan fought, and then the northeastern army poured into Jiangsu like wasps, eating dumplings from a plate, causing great harm to people. In the blink of an eye, the northeastern army was defeated again, and Marshal Sun's Fujian beggar troops occupied Jiangsu again. The war was in chaos, and every family was unscathed. And foreigners are also very annoying. When Oscar was studying in Nanjing, Oscar went out for an outing with Miss Bai, who taught English at his school and met a ship docked in Xiaguan. The foreign sailors came to the shore and went crazy. When they found out that Miss Bai could speak English, they put her on the ship. He and several classmates tried to rescue her, but they were all injured. After Miss Bai's uncle, who was the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, rescued Miss Bai, he heard that Miss Bai had returned to her hometown in the countryside. Oscar didn't dare to think about what happened, and he didn't want to think about it. My father's brother is an old member of the League, but now he is chanting Buddha's name at home. However, he told Oscar a lot of past events and a lot of youthful ambitions. Whenever he talked about Oscar's young heart, he would always smile bleakly, leaving Oscar with a sad back. One day, on April 27th every year, my uncle would get drunk. He touched Oscar's head, which made Oscar feel very uncomfortable, and said, "I know you are the same as I was when I was young, but I don't want you to take the same path as me. Oscar, you must be careful when you decide." Then he wrote, 72 athletes fought vigorously against the spring clouds, blue, and the blood was white. 400 people were worried about seeing the autumn rain wet the yellow flowers. At the end, he threw the pen and burst into tears. Ouyang is Oscar's senior and a distant relative of Oscar's mother. He is an active figure and the center of admiration among girls in the school. His family background is not very good. His father is a poor school teacher with a head full of teachers, but he has raised such a rebellious son. He took good care of Oscar and often brought Oscar into the center of the student movement. Since the May 4th movement in 1988, the student movement in Nanjing has gradually centered on the First Normal University, and Ouyang is the president of the student union of the First Normal University. He was familiar with Oscar because of the bail fee of 400 yuan that Oscar paid in advance after his girlfriend at the time was arrested for handing out leaflets against the Zhili Fengshui War. According to legend, he was still a C.P. or C.Y. or something, but Oscar saw that he was mysterious when this topic was mentioned, so he didn't dare to ask more questions. In fact, Oscar is still a conservative child. He broke with his family and sneaked away to Guangzhou entirely because of a very personal reason. He didn't like the marriage arranged for him by his family. The girl is a girl from the Hou family of the Baoying family in northern Jiangsu. The Hou family had a Qianqing sign in the Preaching dynasty. Later, they started to sell goods from the north to the south, and half of the city belonged to the Hou family. But that girl Oscar one day went to a classmate's house in Baoying to spend the winter vacation. He took a look at Siju Temple in Baoying and saw that she was offering incense. Small feet, very short stature, bloodless skin, and eyes that are dull due to lack of education. His heart suddenly went cold. He tried to discuss this issue with his father for the first time, but what he got was a scolding and a gloating laugh from his eldest brother's bitter sister-in-law. He returned to school numbly to finish his last semester. His father had already decided to go home and get married when he graduated. In February of the 13th year of the Republic of China, Ouyang brought him to a dilapidated and leaky classroom. There were already more than a dozen young people gathered in the classroom who seemed to be unable to contain their enthusiasm. A middle-aged man with a square face encouraged them in a deep voice to go to Guangzhou, go to the heart of the revolution. Apply to Huangpu. Oscar was also one of the young people who was inspired by his youthful passion. At the same time, he vaguely felt that this was a good way out of that abominable marriage. But neither he nor Ouyang had any money. Ever since Oscar paid the 400 yuan in advance, his father had tightened his financial resources. That square-faced middle-aged man has nothing more to offer them than revolutionary rhetoric. So Oscar secretly went home and found her mother, because only her mother understood him. Oscar's grandfather was a Hamlin scholar in the former Qing dynasty, so Oscar's mother, who was well-educated, was also a talented woman. My father liked his mother very much and did not even take a concubine, but he only wanted his mother to be at home while he went out to do his endless business. Mother liked the gentle Oscar very much and sympathized with his unfortunate marriage but she had no say in the family, so she was powerless. When Oscar proposed his plan, his mother silently gave him all her personal savings. So on a cold winter day in late February, Oscar and Ouyang boarded a ship from Shanghai to Hong Kong. After Oscar and Ouyang disembarked from the ship in Hong Kong, they sat in the lounge at the pier and saw the shipping schedule in Guangzhou. After eating the sesame candy, they started drinking tea. Then they heard the growling sound of someone's stomach next to them. Looking back, they saw a young man wearing a tattered cotton coat looking at them. Ouyang asked him, "Are you hungry?" The young man was not polite and came over to sit at their table. He spoke in Shaanxi dialect, "But I'm so hungry. The travel expenses are enough. I've been hungry since the boat." Ouyang asked curiously, "Is it far enough from Shaanxi to live with relatives?" The young man shook his head. "All my relatives are in Shaanxi, and they have never been out of the house for 30 miles. I am the one who studies the most in the family. I went to Guangzhou to take the exam for the military academy." The two looked at each other and asked in unison, "Huang Pu?" The young man's name is Guan Linjing, a native of Fuxin County, Shaanxi Province. He has been hungry for 2 days. Oscar hurriedly ordered a big meat noodle for him, and he started eating it with a slurping sound, burping with satisfaction while eating. Suddenly, he stopped using his chopsticks and said, "My fellow villagers from Shaanxi and Shaanxi went to eat beef offal at the door stall. They said they would pay back later. I don't think this is the king's meal. I'm too timid to go, so the two brothers should go and help and return them together when we get to Huangpu." Shaking his head, he started to snort again. Oscar and Ouyang hurried to the door of the lounge and saw 6 young men and the short beef offal stall owner having fun. A very steady young man with thick eyebrows was reasoning with the boss. "My name is Du Yuming. I will go to Guangzhou to take the military academy exam soon. When I get to Guangzhou, I will pay double the salary." The poor boss couldn't understand his Shaanxi dialect. A tall, thin young man who seemed to be in poor health spoke to Du Yuming in a timid Shaanxi dialect that even Ouyang and Oscar didn't quite understand. They barely knew that his name was Su Xiongqian. Seeing that it was wrong, the two people quickly stepped forward to pay for the rescue. When the 6 of them followed Oscar and the others back to the lounge, they saw Guan Linjing rubbing his belly with satisfaction, and the 6 of them stepped forward and beat him up. The 8 people quickly became acquainted with each other, and everyone called him Oscar Little Jiangsu. On the boat from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, everyone was laughing and joking as if all worries were gone. Oscar was the youngest, sitting among them and smiling lowly. He didn't dare to retaliate when others made fun of him. He felt that he was very happy like this. The boat arrived at Guangzhou Shiguan Pier in the early morning, and the 8 people all stared wide-eyed to see clearly the revolutionary capital under the mist. What I saw was a deserted market, with the streets tightly sealed by wooden fences and cages. Several women with disheveled hair were washing rice and vegetables by the pier. Everyone looked at each other and stopped talking. When the ship docked, Oscar and the passengers were about to disembark when they saw 2 bayonets forcing everyone back to the cabin. Several gray-coated spearmen wearing red hats swaggered up with long rifles made in Japan. Some travelers were whispering, "The order is here." They saw 2 soldiers carrying military sticks with one red end and black one coming up first, followed by 2 soldiers carrying box guns, followed by a bald man wearing a silk trousers jacket and a red identification armband. "Check, check," the soldiers in the order shouted, and the passengers looked at each other. "Immediately unfold your luggage for them to check." When they found out about Du Yuming and his gang from Shaanxi, they saw their heads full of sorghum flowers. The bald man in the middle waved and let them go, but they kept their eyes on Oscar. Oscar was wearing a black woolen student uniform bought at a Japanese store in Shanghai. At first glance, he looked like a kid from a wealthy family. 2 bayonets dangled in front of Oscar's face, and he used the bayonets to open Oscar's bundle and luggage. Wrapped in red paper inside the baggage were oceans, 4 of which cost 50 yuan each. The soldiers made a strange cry. The bald man waved his hand again, and the 2 soldiers immediately lifted Oscar up. Ouyang rushed up to say something, but was also lifted up. Naturally, Du Yuming and the others were not spared. Several people were trapped in a small dark room, and Oscar was asked alone for questioning. Before he went out, Du Yuming said to him, "Little Jiangsu, don't ask for the money. This is Yang Shi means Yunnan army." Then he was slapped by the soldiers in the corner. Oscar came back not long after, sitting on the ground and watching everyone quietly. Ouyang couldn't help but ask first, "What do you mean?" Oscar looked at him blankly. "They said the money should be confiscated, but I listened to Brother Du and didn't take it. But they asked me where I was going, and I said to Huangpu, but they said they were not allowed to go, saying that those who go to Huangpu are not good people, and they want us to serve as soldiers in the Yunnan army." If Yan Kuei among this group of people was impatient, he stood up and was about to punch the window, but was pulled off by Su Qianqian. Ouyang looked at Oscar with his mouth wide open, as if he was seeing his dream collapse before his eyes. Du Yuming was very calm, but he couldn't help frowning and thinking. Only Guan Linzheng was the least concerned. He held the back of his head with both hands and lay down on the ground. "The exam is not until the end of March. Little Jiangsu has no money, and we are in trouble. We just have a place to raise the uncle for a month. He will catch me if I can stand it, but I will run if I can't stand it." The remaining people looked at each other and stood up together and shouted out the window, "We are willing to be soldiers." The soldiers of the Yunnan army are not easy to be a soldier. Oscar was assigned to the squad of Sun Yuanbao, the squadron of Jiang Guangliang's Tan Xiangshan Brigade, Wang Guangwen's regiment, Luo Zhizhong Camp, Lu Fugui's company, Zhang Erge's platoon. Ouyang, Du Yuming, and Guan Linzheng were in the same class as him. For the first time, Oscar learned that the officers of the Yunnan army did not wear military uniforms. They only wore a command armband on their arms. He also learned that their red-ringed hats were left over from the National Protectorate era, but few people remembered that glorious history. Oscar also learned for the first time that soldiers eat like this. Everyone eats standing on the ground with a thick bowl. As soon as the platoon leader calls stop, everyone from the squad leader to the privates must lift the bowls above their heads and turn them around. If they don't finish eating, they have to use the leftovers to take a shower. However, Guan Linzheng has never taken a shower. Oscar also learned for the first time that the Yunnan army officers watch the soldiers drill on recliners and open the table to gamble at night. He also learned that these soldiers could also be called gambling den thugs, brothel bodyguards, and cigarette smugglers. For the first time, Oscar knew that there were too many. Ouyang had completely lost interest in the army and vowed not to even take the Wampoa exam. However, Guan Linzheng and Du Yuming seemed to be born to be soldiers. Oscar felt that he could still handle it. He had a good temper and knew how to read. He was willing to help the company commander calculate the day's income and write letters to Xiao Hong in the brothel for the soldiers. Everyone treated him well. Oscar and Ouyang met Du Wan for the first time one day when they were helping a Japanese goods merchant in Shiguan to guard the store at night. She held up a lantern and shined it on her father. The soft candlelight illuminated her moon-white student skirt and jet-black shorts, and Oscar's heart suddenly paused. Her face had soft lines and was much fairer than the local girls in Guangzhou. Her chin was thin and delicate. When she turned her head and saw the two soldiers looking at her stupidly, she couldn't help but smile. Oscar was stunned to find that she actually had dimples. Under the moonlight, her eyes were clear and her figure was graceful. Squad leader Sun Yuanbao struggled to speak half-baked Cantonese to her father. These two soldiers, they are both college students. They are literate and can read and write, which is great. Her father glanced at them indifferently and said nothing, but she asked them curiously, "Are you really college students?" Oscar blushed for a while and didn't know what to say, but Ouyang took over the conversation with a smile. "No, we are just from a normal school and haven't graduated yet." The girl looked back at her father. "Dad, I won't accompany you to have dinner with Company Commander Lu. I'll wait for you here." The businessman thought for a while, and today he invited Oscar and their company commander to dinner. It seems better for his daughter to stay here than to be molested by the pervert Captain Lu after returning home. He nodded. "Okay, I'll ask Mother Lu to accompany you right away, and I'll ask a foreign car to pick you up later." The next 2 hours were a happy time for these three young people, but Du-won seemed to have been talking to Ouyang, while Oscar had been dealing with Lu's mother's endless curious questions about Jiangsu. But he felt that it was also very happy to look at her like this. On March 15th, Oscar, Ouyang, Du Yuming, Guan Linzheng, and a Hunan boy had a fight with Su Chongji's founding Guangdong army. The cause was that when the four of them were wandering on the street, they heard two groups arguing. It seemed that the group of Hunan boys wanted to go to Whampoa, and they came from another military academy. Guan Linzheng was the first to rush forward, then Du Yuming. Oscar felt that he had no reason to stay out of the matter, so he also rushed forward. The last one was Ouyang, who sighed helplessly. There was no winner or lose in the battle, because everyone was taken away by Wu Tietjing's public security troops. The leader of that group of Hunan boys is very handsome, with bright black eyes, and his popular name is Chen Geng. It's time to eat. A police officer brought a basket of potatoes and a jar of potato tea into the small room. I saw Chen Geng and Guan Linjing chatting in high spirits, while Du Yuming looked on with a smile and interjected from time to time. Ouyang was chatting happily with a pale-faced Hunan young man named He Zhonghan. Only Oscar and a few Hunan boys looked at the basket of sweet potatoes. It's no wonder that a group of people were locked up here and no one cared about them for 5 or 6 hours. Their stomachs were already screaming with hunger. Oscar poked Ouyang. Ouyang, it's time to eat. Ouyang waved his hand impatiently and asked He Zhonghan, "Do you think this arrangement of workers, peasants, soldiers, and students of business is reasonable? How much contribution have farmers made to today's China because they are ignorant and ignorant? Workers of power, but without students' education, workers can't do anything. Students should be China's greatest hope today. Any movement since the May 4th movement has shown this. According to me, it should be students, businessmen, soldiers, workers, and peasants." When Oscar saw that there was no hope, he turned to look at Guan and Du. The three Qin dynasty's form controls the key points of the world, and the soldiers are brave and strong. No one can refute it. Du Yuming nodded loudly at the side. Chen Geng, however, was not someone to be trifled with. He shouted with a Hunan accent, "We cannot form an army without Hunan. When there was trouble in Hahuang in your Sanqin area, and Mao Tu hit you in Shaanxi, wasn't Zhuo Wenzhong and his 30,000 Hunan disciples able to calm it down for you?" Oscar couldn't persuade him at first glance. He shook his head and ran away first. He saw a young man from Hunan who looked very smart. He was holding it in his mouth, holding it in his hand, and carrying it in his arms. From a glance, he was planning to even have a midnight snack. This time it was enough. Oscar hurriedly rushed over and grabbed a lot of it, and finally got half full. While we were drinking potato tea, I remembered to ask the young man from Hunan what his name was. The young man from Hunan winked and said, "Jia Weitu from Chengde, you are not slow to start." There was actually a lot of sympathy behind his words. It wasn't until the next day that the Public Security Bureau thought of dealing with the fight and trouble. Su Chongji soldiers and Wu Tietjing's people were originally from the same system and had left long ago. However, the Public Security Bureau had to release these young men from out of town on bail. Now, ask this group of people to go there to find a guarantor. But Chen Geng said very arrogantly, "My guarantor is Mr. Liao Zhongkai. Please invite him." The handling staff was stunned when they saw Chen Geng take out a letter from his arms, and it turned out to be a letter of recommendation written by Liao Zhongkai to Huangpu. It turned out that Chen Geng and others were originally organized by the Kuomintang and the Communist Party from Hunan to Guangzhou to take the Huangpu exam, but they were forced to attend a camp school by the founding Hunan army. There had been more than one quarrel, and when they finally met Liao Zhongkai, Liao Kai wrote a letter asking them to go directly to Cheng Chao. The person on duty asked them why they took it out now. Chen Geng smiled and said, "I was chatting happily with some brothers and forgot about it for a moment." Several young men from Hunan bowed their hands towards Oscar and the others and said, "See you in Huangpu," and walked away. Oscar and the four of them were left looking at each other. The Public Security Army and the Yunnan Army have never been in contact with each other. There have been countless frictions between the two sides over donations of cigarettes, gambling, and flowers from Guangzhou. It is a fantasy to think that the Public Security Army will notify the Yunnan Army to pick up people. When the four of them were not doing anything, a familiar crisp voice came from the window. Dad, since we have invited the Yunnan Army to guard the store, why do we have to go to the Public Security Bureau to pay a security donation? Looking out of the window with broken window paper, he saw a pretty girl in a white dress helping her father out of the captain's office. Ouyang and Oscar looked at each other. Cuckoo! It is not easy to be a soldier of the Yunnan Army, Oscar realized this strongly again. Although they were rescued by Duwan's father, they were arrested by the police because they did not return to camp for a day. They lost the face of the Yunnan Army and received 10 military sticks each. The four of them lay on the reed bed, and brothers from other classes came to take care of them. Su Xiangqian was older and had been a teacher. He was very good at taking care of others and used vinegar to smoke their legs. But Ouyang's treatment is still the most special because Duwan will come to take care of her. Ignoring the ill-intentioned cries of other Yunnan soldiers and the intentional and unintentional attempts of the company and platoon commanders to take advantage of him, she would always come to the smelly soldier barracks to look after Ouyang and help him change his dressing and wash his clothes. Then she could always see Ouyang talking to her with joy, and her eyes would always light up when she heard it. Finally, she looked at Ouyang with a look that made Oscar feel inexplicable and sad. On March 20th, the four men recovered, and the Yunnan Army lost 9 soldiers that night. In the future, there will be 5 more generals between the two armies of the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. On March 21st, Oscar came out of the examination room in a very bad mood. It wasn't because he didn't know some of the test questions and he believed he could pass the cultural test, but because Ouyang didn't want to take the Huangpu exam. He declined everyone's persuasion and said he was going to a friend's house to review in preparation for the Guangzhou University exam. Later, he secretly told Oscar that he had gone to a cousin of Duwan's who was studying at Guangzhou University. Originally, Oscar didn't care, but he didn't want to watch Ouyang and Duwan together all day long, so even he didn't know why. He decided to go against Ouyang's arrangement for the first time and still go to Huangpu. During the 3 days of 21, 22, and 23, Oscar and the others had a very hard time. First, they didn't know what their test scores would be, and second, they had no money, so they lived in the cheapest hotels and ate the worst food. A short Huangpu candidate named Hu Zhongnan from Zhejiang province also lived in the same hotel with them. He was not young yet, and he was not necessarily handsome, but he always looked like he thought he was great and was indifferent to others. One night, he seemed bored and chatted with fellow Oscar. According to his theory, people from Zhejiang and Jiangsu are all from the same hometown. Oscar was hungry and sleepy. He seemed to remember that he was talking about how he was squeezed out of Zhejiang schools and how he had ambitions to get ahead. Finally, he slapped Oscar hard. Little Jiangsu, do your best. Do you know where the principal is from? He is from Zhejiang. Book Friend's appearance list. 1. Townsling. The original Book Friend Commander Tang. When he appeared, he was the commander of the 3rd Battalion of the 1st Regiment of the Soviet Shanghai Revolutionary Army and participated in the attack on Tianbao City. He is currently the commander of the 2nd Regiment of the 1st Brigade of the 1st Division. Colonel. The future direction may lead to death in battle. Druge Muxinge. The original Book Friend, Mu Xinghe. When he appeared on the scene, he was the director of the Military Medical Department of the 1st Division and treated Yu Chen, who was seriously injured. The current is still the director of the Military Medical Department. Colonel. The future direction is to continue to be a military doctor, a promising career. 3. Shen Zihan. I can't remember the original shape. When he appeared, he was the commander of the Teaching Cavalry Battalion of the 1st Division Teaching Group and the protagonist of the tragic defeat in Zhongbao Town. The current was sentenced to demotion by the military court. He is currently the commander of the 1st Company of the Cavalry Training Battalion. The future direction is probably to die in battle. 4. Shen Zimo. I still can't remember the original Form 5555. When he appeared, he was the youth platoon leader of the 2nd Brigade and one of the first participants when the Youth Army Association was established. The future direction, because he is a member of Tiexin's King Junhui and a fanatical admirer of Master Yu. It is estimated that the official career will be smooth sailing. But he is just a simple soldier and believes in militarism, so he will probably make some mistakes in the future. 5. Bai Xuan. It turns out that Chang Fenli's deputy Bai Dai, who has a low-ranking rank, when he appeared, he was the captain of the guard of the Governor-General of Liangjiang in the Qing dynasty. Now, he was transferred from the captain of the guard in Yuchen to the deputy director of the intelligence department, lieutenant colonel. For the future, he will make use of his connections in the north and his natural ability to do secret work. Do intelligence work. 6. Duncan. The original book Friend Communist International Factory. He was an overseas Chinese in the United States when he appeared and is currently the general manager of Jiangnan Manufacturing Bureau. Looking forward to the future, he concurrently serves as the director of the Ordnance Department and has made great contributions to the upgrading of weapons and equipment of the 1st Division to maintain domestic advancement. Other book lovers are waiting to continue to sign up enthusiastically. Sky. The sky is blue and transparent, and the earth is golden. Lying in the ditch and looking up to the sky is one of the protagonists of our novel, Lai Wenjin, a second-year student at Daliang Infantry School. He was very tired because he wore a body armor made of fine iron sheets, with cooked cowhide wrapping around the joints, a copper helmet with a nose guard buckled on his sweaty head, and an iron chain helmet protecting the back of his neck. Fine iron shin guards covered his calves, and the thick cowhide boots seemed to have not been fully polished and had an unpleasant smell. At the same time, he also carried a long shield made of thick boxwood and cowhide, a long folding iron knife weighing 9 pounds and 7 taels, a short bow, 50 arrows, 3 days' worth of fried noodles and dried beef strips, a pair of cotton blankets, tent sticks. God knows how there were so many things. Made him feel like a loaded mule. What's even more frightening is that there are 500 similar mules beside him, panting as loudly as him. Daliang Infantry School is a jewel in the crown of the Daliang dynasty. Since the founding of the country 115 years ago, Daliang has relied on the power of heavy infantry groups to operate in the prosperous areas of Huang, Wei, and Hetao. This is a very rich food and cotton production area. As for fuel, there are also abundant forests and coal. The folk custom